Before I jump into program tutorials, I wanted to go over video resolution, bitrate, and frame rates, three key components of video compression that ultimately affect the size and quality of your rip. So let's jump right in. Most of you should be familiar with video resolution, especially in this day and age. 1080p, 720p, and 4K often get thrown around aimlessly, especially when it comes to selling point buzzwords for TVs and video games. But when it comes to ripping videos, things get a little more specific, and this is important. In the case of most programs, you will never see these very basic resolutions. What you will see are a ton of pixel by pixel options on top of an aspect ratio, and this is when the initial confusion starts to brew in your mind. First, let's deconstruct this confusion by looking at this chart that converts the normal resolutions that are often advertised into a more detailed pixel by pixel resolution. This is ultimately what you will be looking to target, at least in the matter of Blu-rays or video conversion when it comes to high definition visuals. Hopefully this helped dispel some of the confusion. There is of course still the issue of what came before it, which we know today to be standard definition. In most cases, standard definition is a resolution synonymous with the DVD. DVDs on average have a resolution of 360p or 480 by 360 or 640 by 360. I know you are wondering, where did the two different resolutions come from? And this brings us to a very important part of this puzzle, the aspect ratio. Now, during the rise of flat screen TVs, we started to see video of what we now know to be widescreen, or an aspect ratio of 16 by 9. Before this change, we viewed video on a 4 by 3 aspect ratio. Are you still following me here? I hope so. So when it comes to DVDs and many of the movies and TV shows that were created in that time, most of the content was recorded in a 4 by 3 aspect ratio. However, the rise of wide screens ultimately got studios to use the new aspect ratio, and as you now see, the widescreen format ultimately took over. When you are trying to rip your DVDs or Blu-rays for that matter, it's very important to make sure that you know both the resolution and the aspect ratio of the movie. It's also important that you don't stray from the original resolution or aspect ratio, as images can look stretched or give you a blurry picture if you choose to do so. I'm of the opinion that you let your TV or device do the upscaling. You just focus on ripping the original content on the best format as possible. Saving space may be an objective of yours, and if this is the case, then your bitrate is going to be an important part of this decision. What is the bitrate? Well, the simple definition says it is the number of the bits that are processed in a unit of time. I guess it's best to think of it in the same way you transfer data from one location to another, as video sort of moves in this same manner when it's being output in its visual form. It's basically what the word streaming derives from. I try to make sense, I promise I do. Now, of course, the higher the bit rate, the sharper the image. You can really take notice of this often in videos that exhibit an extreme amount of movement. The more movement that takes place, the more likely you are to see this blocky sort of visual during fast-moving sequences. It is one of the main reasons I still prefer ripping movies from the physical media than watching it from the internet. As you can see in the chart, on average, a DVD's highest bitrate is 9.9 megabits per second, while Blu-ray's bitrate can get into the upwards of a whooping 60 megabits per second. As I understand it, 5 megabits per second is quite efficient, as this is often the bitrate you will find on streaming video. Of course, you may have guessed that the higher the bitrate, the more space it will take, and depending on what you choose, file sizes can definitely get much higher than you have space for, which means you have to ask yourself a serious question. Is what I'm ripping Blu-ray worthy? Sense any foreshadowing in that? No? Moving on then. Last but not certainly least, you have the frame rate. Now in most cases, the frame rate is often 24 frames per second for movies and 30 frames per second for TV shows. Of course, this all depends on what you are ripping and how it was presented. It is recommended that the higher the frame rate is, the higher your bit rate should be. As you might have already guessed, ripping content from physical media can be quite the balancing act. So after all of that, I guess you're wondering how on earth are you supposed to determine what true resolution, bitrate, and the frame rate for the physical media you are using is. I Guess you would want to know that. Yes, you would. There is a way, or should I say many ways, to get this information. Of course, certain applications are quite adept at giving you the most accurate information as possible. Applications like the VLC Media Player are highly recommended as they provide the information for everything we have discussed and more. Sometimes you can just look at the back of your physical media and at least get some information off of the bat, though we still recommend you use applications for the time being. I also recently found out about Bluray.com, a website that offers information on both Blu-ray and DVDs. I'll be leaving a link to their website along with the VLC Player application in the description box below. Now that you know what is involved in ripping video from a physical media, it will hopefully be much easier to tackle the programs that I'll be showcasing in the next few videos. For now, I'm the Core, your resident entertainment techie, signing out.